Will the audience be able to see me or just
Y-
slides?
Yeah, yeah, they'll be able to see you. Okay, so we are live, and uh, thanks everyone for joining this session on Blazor. So, well, I'll begin by in inviting Mr. Kaushik Roy Chowdhury on this Blazor tutorial. Kaushik has been running courses on YouTube and on Udemy, and he has a YouTube channel of his own and quite a popular one. So
Thank you,
maybe
Sudhir.
Kaushik, if you could just introduce yourself and then probably start with the session. One thing that I've noticed that for some reason the Q&A option is not appearing on this Teams meeting. But if anyone has any questions, they can put them up on the meetup
Yes.
site, and I'll
Yeah,
ask
will
them
yes. I
and
will make
sort of
sure I
get
can
started.
answer. Yeah, that
Yeah,
will be
yeah.
good actually. Because yeah, hi, thank you, Sudeep. My name is Kaushik, and I am first time dared to be a part of this Azure meetup. Actually, I have known Sudeep for a very long time, and I was just contemplating whether I should ask Sudeep for a proper slot in this meetup. But because it was Azure, and I'm not an Azure person to be honest, but he has given me a chance very kindly. So what I'm going to speak is on Blazor, which is Microsoft's the latest framework, web framework, which I think at least if not all of you, some of you might have surely heard, or maybe all of you might have heard because I guess all of you are from .NET community. And Blazor is something that I have actually been hobnobbing with for the last not too long a time, you can say since the year end, last year end. And I have done a course on Blazor, which was, which has got at least some moderate responses. A couple of 200 people have enrolled, paid enrollment. And what the Blazor is actually, if from the start, the Blazor is, as I said, that is the Microsoft web framework, latest web development framework. And the main and the first thing that attracted my attention towards Blazor was that, this is completely JavaScript free in the sense that it is a complete client and server side application that, I mean, there is a behind the scene JavaScript, but as a coder, as a developer, you don't need to call in any JavaScript, I mean, scripting within your client or the server. Although it gives us a feature of JavaScript interop so that .NET can call the JavaScript functions and vice versa. JavaScript can call the .NET, but that's another thing. That's the you still don't need to write any JavaScript code. So that drew me into this Blazor uh, community, because it's not that I am very bad in JavaScript, but I somehow couldn't like in my developer career because I have worked for quite some time since the beginning of this millennium as a developer, both in Christchurch as well as in Auckland for a few years, and I have taught at the Auckland University of Technology as a lecturer in programming, C Sharp and even Java, and I have also taught as a academic staff member for about 3 years in Christchurch Polytechnic, now known as ARA, and I have developed some courses on C for them. So Blazor is basically, I mean, it has got, why it has become very popular, because it promise its main hosting model is WebAssembly. So it's intended, Microsoft intends it to popularize its client-side web hosting model, although it has got two hosting model. One is the server side and another is the client side. Now, the client side WebAssembly is actually, it is supposed to be purely deployed as a static web page, and it doesn't require any server at all. It is actually downloaded on the browser itself, all the DLLs and .NET runtime and the static files, and it can connect to, and serve the static web pages. So now Microsoft has been able to finally um, release the first version only last month, first stable version of WebAssembly last month. So I believe that it will get build up in popularity over the next few months or years, and I'm not sure whether it will ever replace Angular or React fully, but what I am getting from the community, the feedbacks and the differences, different blogs that I'm going through, is that it is becoming gaining traction very fast, and that's because it is not only open source, but it is running on the WebAssembly, and it has come out with the first full version. And that WebAssembly version is also it can also be hosted as a option on ASP.NET Core, so to provide a server. But sometimes you don't need any server, so in that case it is completely server free. And on the other hand, there is another template which is Blazor Server Assembly, server template, which is just like any conventional ASP.NET Core web application. So, and the thing is that with the WebAssembly, you don't need any server, and so that it doesn't have to manage any connectivity to the server, and you can run it offline as well. So Blazor these days, I have seen that it is running as a progressive web application. That is a new term that I've come to know. And in progressive web application, a web application can run just as a native desktop application, and it can run offline. And when it is connected to the network, it needs to whenever it needs to refresh its content, it connects to the network, and that's all. So there are lots of things that we can discuss, but the time is very prohibitive. So at the moment, I can run through some slideshow, and as we go through the slides, I can talk a little bit about what this Blazor, what are the features, which are the highlights of this Blazor. All right. So any question till this moment? Sudeep?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
No questions so far.
All right. So Blazor is a framework. If I guess all of you are able to see my screen. So it shows that Blazor is a framework for building interactive client-side web UI with .NET. So what happens is that this is a Blazor. Blazor has got a component structure, much like the I believe I'm not an Angular or a React person, but I learned a little bit of React in my initial days a couple of years back. So it has got a component structure. Likewise, Blazor is completely components. So you have got reusable components, much like the methods in C# or functions in any other language. So you can build components which can be reused and which can be dropped into the parent container, parent component. So in this screen, it shows that the top side, this part, this is just like a razor page. It is a mixture of HTML markup and C# code. Now this part, those of you who may be familiar with Razor language is actually this @ symbol. Whenever it is @ on click like this means that this is a C# code, and there is a distinct section on @ code. This block belongs to the pure C# code, right? So you can write basically a C# code and the HTML markup in the same file. However, Blazor also gives you the this facility, or it facilitates that you can put this code part in a class, like you might have been used to the earlier Microsoft Web Form framework, which has got a class behind file. So this can be written in a class by itself. Okay, so what this code part is doing is that this is a very one of the most simple and rudimentary component. What it does is that following the place of this button, there is a button with a class button btn primary. This is bootstrap class, and when the button is clicked, this is on click event. This double count method is called, and it is actually incrementing this present count variable by 2 every time this double count button is clicked. So that is one of the components, just to show what this Blazor is. It's a very rudimentary component. So the next is, now this is a photo courtesy Microsoft.com, and this shows a little bit that Blazor runs on WebAssembly on the server, and WebAssembly is nothing but it's a binary format open web standard. You can say I'm not here to speak a lot about WebAssembly, but this is an open web standard. It has been in existence for quite some years, but Microsoft has finally harnessed it to build this WebAssembly for Blazor. Okay, so Blazor is built on open web standards, as I just told, and it can share codes and libraries because it's C# all around. So it can share code between the client side and the server side for the Blazor server application. And even when the Blazor WebAssembly template, if it is hosted on ASP.NET Core server, the code can be easily shared between the client side, purely client side, and the server side. So that these are the highlights, and there are many other things. That there is one JavaScript interop feature which I spoke in the beginning. So C# handshakes with the JavaScript, and JavaScript talks to the C#, all within the same application. So you can put some JavaScript function, and C# will be able to interact with the JavaScript code, JavaScript script blocks, and JavaScript can also interact with C#. So that facility, that functionality is there. And then it is a UI component ecosystem, and it has got a large community. And at the time that I was developing this course, almost 6 months back, it has a 60,000 plus open source contributors, and there were 3,700 plus company contributors. And out of them, Telerik and Red Hat and many other big companies, they are the contributors to this Blazor component development. DevExpress is also one of them, those who have had the chance to hear about DevExpress. And it has got an active community. And in this tutorial, what I was actually, this was meant for the Udemy, but this shows some of the things that the Blazor supports. It supports partial classes for those who are, who know something about C# partial classes. Blazor supports partial classes usage, and it allows you component tags usage. And there are some of the things that Blazor was not able to give earlier, but with the the release of the first WebAssembly version, you are able to do all of these stuff, which are being done in JavaScript in a customary fashion. Default action prevention, and you are able to pass parameters to top level components, like from child to the parent level components. And it has also got the feature to stop event propagation from child to parent and parent to child, and it has got detailed error handling during app development. So all these are part of the new release. So earlier there were lots of previews going on, and every few weeks there used to be one preview, but after that Microsoft has finally released the first stable version of Blazor WebAssembly template in their Microsoft conference last month in May. But before that, Blazor Server was also in existence with the full release version since I think last December, in 2019 December. So now it is, both are in the stable version. Okay, so here it shows that the preview demo of the completed application, run the application, and user test the application with data. This one is actually one of the applications that I have built with CRUD, with complete create, retrieve, update, and delete facility with database. So if probably it will be a good time to show you this application. So I can. Yes,
Kaushik, before you start sharing the application, just for the attendees, for some reason the Q&A feature isn't working. So if you have any questions, you can put up on the meetup site. I have received one question so far. Kaushik, do you want me to ask the question towards the end of the session, or
let me see if I can handle it right now. Otherwise, you can I can even get back if I am unable to answer today, because I am not too much current on Blazor, because I have moved on from Blazor to Dockerization. Anyway, I will try to answer, but if I am unable, I will answer it at the end of the session, or maybe through the Meetup website or something,
Yes,
some
yes.
other
Okay.
channel. Yeah.
Yeah. So people can put their
Yes.
comments or questions
Sure.
on the meetup site, and I'll ask them to question.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
So, okay, go ahead. Right. So let me share that screen of the finished application. Where it is. Okay. Right. So this was the CRUD application that I have shown in the Udemy course. So this is a Blazor movie database. So you can see this is a standard template. I have not changed the navigation scheme. This is home, counter, and fetch data. So at the very basic level, this counter is automatically formed, and if you click on it, will increment. But that's not my aim. So what happens is that, I have made this movie database. So if I browse to movies, this is you will see that it will, so you are not authorized to view this page unless logged in, right? So this is where the main thing starts, that this application I will show you just in a bit. Now this application is actually showing the full authentication and authorization features in Blazor Web Framework. So authentication is, if you are logged in, your authentication, and you are authenticated, and then once you are authenticated, you will be authorized to see certain part of the website which will not be otherwise visible if you are not authenticated. So you'll be authorized once you are authenticated. So at this moment you are not authorized to view, so I'll have to log in. So I've got a few logins I've already registered, so I can do that. But before that, I just wanted to show you one feature, that if I click on this force exception checkbox, and if I click on retry, at this moment nothing happens, but once the movie CRUD is comes, I can show you. So let me log in with a registration that I've created. So now you can see that this movie's navigation bar is there, navigation menu is there on the left hand, and it has got rid of the other things like home, counter, etc. Right? So now you're authorized. You can see that hello test@hotmail.com. So you can log out. Okay, so if you click on movies, what happens is that this is a spin kit component. So this was a cool feature that I found from one of the websites, which is very popular, in the Blazor community. There's a site, Awesome Blazor. Okay, so that site is written by someone. If I remember his name, he's someone known as Adrian Torres. Probably he's a Microsoft MVP, and he is actually collected lots of blogs, applications, and videos and other tutorials, and he have put it in a one website, Awesome Blazor. So if you type, I think on Google Awesome Blazor, you'll be able to get to the right place. Right. So this is, I have created a few movies. So you've got the edit and delete. So what happens is that, if you let me try, click the force exception. If I click retry, so an exception occurred. So I'm just simulating an exception. So no movies could be shown at this time. Clear the checkbox and try again. Okay, so retry. So now it brings up all the movies, right? So what happens is that in this browsing screen, if you click on edit, so this is a modal dialog window appears. So if you want to edit this movie, you can say Sound of Music, updated. This is an genre. Any of the other fields you want to change, you can submit, and it will keep the title below 25 characters. Now this is a validation, client-side validation I have created. just to show the students that this it can be validated also. So okay, so let me see, client side movie, just anything. All right, so let me see if it is within 25 character, it will allow me to submit the data. So you can see that this is the change has been incorporated, right? And if I wish to add a movie, it will come up with this add new movie dialog, which is actually a recycle of the same dialog, that is the edit dialog. Okay, so I am recycling the same um, this modal. This is a modal window which has been used for edit. Only the title changes. Now this title changing is also brought about by one of the cool features of Blazor, which allows you to dynamically change the title at runtime depending upon the type of operation that you are doing, right? So if I want to add a new movie, so say it is showing Princess or something. If I want to change the date, so and genre, say romantic, just a fictitious thing, say my name. And running time, say if I wish to submit a running time of say 20 minutes, it will not allow me to sign because value for the running time must be between 60 and 240. Okay, so there's another check, and I have done it through the client side attributes, validation attributes, and if I wish to delete, I can delete. Do you want to delete this movie? Yes. Right. Now the main feature, apart from this CRUD functionality, supposing I log out, and then if I log in with some other credentials like test1@hotmail.com, let's see what happens. Now again, movies come on the left side navigation because you're authenticated. Now this time you can see this is a different set of movies. That means your data as a user is protected. Once you have logged in and you created a few movie records, and if you log out, if someone else, your friend, logs in with a different credential, he will not be able to see he'll be able to see only his movies, not anyone else's, right? And that is about this application. And I would like to show a little bit if you are interested, but I can put it to the end. But before that, I can tell you a little bit of features, basic features about the Blazor as a framework. So any questions, Sudeep, or anything you'd like to talk to?
No, so I'll park the questions for later. So
okay,
maybe after
right.
you're done.
Okay, so I have run the application and I have tested the application with the data bit. So I can discuss about the code a little bit later, although I'm not sure whether this is the right platform to discuss the code because, but yeah, anyway, we can see. So let's do a small analysis of a much simpler component. Create a result component in Blazor, analyze the code, run the app, and to see the result. Okay, so this was another component that I created, and I think I can discuss that component, which will be much easier for a first timer in Blazor to understand. So let me get it. Actually, I'll have to. I'm not sharing that screen, but let me get it. The first component. 1 second. My first component. Sudeep, you are able to see the screen, eh? Excuse me. Are you able to see
yes,
this?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So let me load up this. It's a much simpler application, and but it demonstrates some points. Okay. Now, by the way, this one, our Blazor supports everything: one-way data binding, two-way data binding, like in other client-side applications, and it supports event callback. It supports parent-child, this inheritance. So whatever you can think of as features in any other established client-side framework, Blazor supports that. So here, this was, I made it as a component, my first component. So this is a calculate average dot razor. This is, so any component that you are going to build in Blazor is a razor component. So to start with, let me tell you a little bit. So if you want to create a component, what you do is on the pages folder that is automatically created for you with the template, right click and add razor component. OK, and all the razor components end up with a file extension razor, dot razor. So dot razor. OK, so those of you who might have known ASP.NET Core MVC or ASP.NET MVC, you might be familiar with the CSHTML files, the view files. So they are known as razor files. However, Blazor components they have stolen the file extension .razor rather than those old CSHTML files, which were actually marked as razor files, So anyway, those files are also looking very similar, but only thing is that those files didn't have this code block additionally. So what this page is doing is that at the top there is a page directive. There are quite a few page directives, but this is the most elementary page directive, which is actually directing the users with the navigation link to average. Following HTTP localhost, if you write /front/average, then it will browse you to that page. I will show you in a bit. OK, so what this has, it has got a div at a top div, which is a class container, you can see, and it has got a enclosing div, which is a showing H1 header with an average calculator, and it has got a button which has got this class, and on click of the button, the average of numbers is this function, this method is run. And it's nothing but it's a very elementary application which sums up the number from 1 to 100 and calculates the average. And it resets the sum to 0, so that if a user clicks the average button again, it doesn't come with the average. It starts. It can start all over again and not calculate a wrong average. So if I run this application, I can run it with Control F5, which will show what happens. So it takes a little bit of time. First time it takes more time than other occasions. So now this is a standard navigation menu. If I write average, that is there. So average calculator, if you click on get average, it will calculate the average from 1 to 100. So, and it could be made more flexible. You could make it calculate the average of numbers from 1 to any number. OK, so that's it. And then and you can create a nested component. You can create a child dialog component in Blazor and create a parent component that nests the child component. So that project is also there with me. Just if you are interested, I can show it to you. Would you like to see? Sudeep, should I show this application quickly? Parent-child relationship?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, yeah, OK. So if we have time now, let me dig it up. I hope this is from this application. Actually, all these projects are in my Udemy course. And if someone happens to subscribe to my channel, there are lots of Blazor tutorials. Now, this one is child component and dialog.razor. Oh, parent and child, right? So what happens is that, in this child component, there's something new I need to tell you. This is at code block. So now I think you are familiar by this time that what is this at code? This is a C# code. Although you can choose to create a class file and write that class file as a proper C# class, okay, and then inject that class, okay, inject that class. But that's another story because I prefer normally writing on the same file. Okay, there are lots of authors, lots of developers who would like to create a code class file for this. So this parameter, now this parameter it denotes the target member as a component parameter. Now, because this is a child component, it needs to be dropped somewhere on a parent component. It is reusable. Okay, so this parameter attribute is allowing this particular field, this particular public property's title, or this property child content to be a part of the child component's parameters. Now the meaning will be clear when I show further. And now, after this parameter attribute, there are two more things that I need to say. That is, one is render fragment. Now render fragment it renders a part of the UI. If I show you the IntelliSense, it represents a segment of the UI content implemented as a delegate that writes the content to a render tree builder. Okay, so what happens in Blazor is that once a change is made in the client side and it communicates through a signal-R channel, signal-R communication protocol with the server, and the server fetches the response, and only the changes to the client's DOM is sent back to the client from the client browser from the server, and that change is updated on the client, so that the loading is almost instant because it is never a full page refresh. Okay, so render fragment, what it does is that anything that is to be of the type render fragment has to be written a child content, marked a child content, and this child content is actually put over there with @child content. So what happens is that if you come to this parent component, now this parent component, this page directive, if you navigating to the parent component, and you can see this is the child component. Now here the child component is dropped as if it is just like an ordinary HTML tag. Okay, so that's one of the beauty, and that means this is getting reused. This child component is being used in the parent component. And see, this is title. Now this is title and mark this get event. So these two things were actually title and get event were the parameterized fields, public properties or fields from the child component. So by marking them with parameter attribute, I am able to use them as components of the child within the parent. Now, what this event callback is doing, event callback is a delegate that connects the child to the parent, in the sense that in the last example, I have shown you in the average calculator that if you are clicking a button, it is calling a method, right? But here it is calling a get event. So it is calling a event callback delegate. Okay, so and when you come back to the parent component, that delegate is actually calling this show message method, right? So basically with this event callback delegate, you are able to bind, you are able to call a parent component method from the child component, right? So this is nicely tying these two together. And what is mouse event args? It supplies information about a mouse event that is being raised, like mouse click or mouse over, mouse out. So these events are the part of the event callback. So if you now run this application, I will show you what is happening and then I'll come back and analyze the code further. Okay, so let's run this application without debug. Control F5. So if you click, do you want to learn more about Blazor? If you click yes, yes button was selected. Okay, then 1 second. I'll have to browse to the parent component. So this was not the right place. So I'll have to browse to parent component. So parent. Right. Okay. So if I will just analyze the code. Please see, bear with me. What is happening? If you click on this button, trigger a parent component method. So this is coming from the child component. All of this content is coming from the child component. And when you click this child component button, it will trigger this string, Blazor new trail with Blazor. Now, let me do one thing. I will keep it a little bit minimized and then show the screen side by side for you to appreciate what I am trying to say. Right. I can just close this screen just to buy more real estate or just shift it a bit. Okay. Right. So now I think I can explain better. Okay, so we are into the parent component. So / parent component after the localhost and port number. So this is H1 header is showing parent child example. Right. So after that, there is a child component. Okay. So child component title is hi kid, my parent supplied title. So this is now getting rendered over here. Hi kid, my parent supplied title. And then this get event method is this event callback. So show message. So that show message is actually, it is going to show Blazor new trail with Blazor. But hang on, this message will be shown only on this paragraph, message text, in this, because this is actually put at the bottom, at the end, at the very bottom, just above the code. So when you click this trigger parent component, this message Blazor new trail will be rendered below it. Okay, and within this, first this title and then this component, this content of the child component. Hey, I am the child, I am happy for my parent to supply the content. So this is now showing a parent-child relationship, how child component can be shown through the parent that it is enclosed within. Right. So next, coming back to the slideshow, I think I'll have to revisit this again, but for the time being, I will just close this application and come back to the slideshow, which is this one. Right. So created a nested component. Something else has started actually. So one-way data binding. Now, one-way data binding is nothing but, if just for an example, if you are building a .NET application, web form application or web application, just the control. Suppose you are clicking a button, it updates something. It updates a text box or a label. So that is one-way binding. But one-way binding is obviously supported as well as the two-way binding. So in one-way binding, updates to the value that a control has is unidirectional or flows only one way. To render a label with updated text dynamically is an example of one-way binding. In Blazor, one-way binding could be in response to the triggering of an event by the user, such as a button click. One-way binding will modify the value of the label above, as the user will not be able to do so directly. Okay, so this is the event triggered by user, value gets updated and updated value is rendered on the browser. However, people will be more interested in the two-way binding. So two-way binding is happening this way. It has two-directional flow, allowing values to be updated from two directions. Like, if you are, say, you have got this view on the browser and a class. So if you're changing, updating the view, the class or the model will also be updated, and vice versa. If you are updating the model, the view will be changed. So for an example, as the user types in the data into a form input control, the data updates and renders on the browser. Okay, so two-way binding can be used anywhere that an application needs a user input, primarily use still being in the forms. The main way that two-way binding is used in Blazor is through the user bind attribute. Now, what is the bind attribute? It takes this form. Three forms actually it takes. The first is add bind. It is bound to a particular property or field, public property, and you can also write it like add bind value equals the property. To the property. It's basically the same thing. I don't see much difference between these two. But however, there is another form which is bind value to the property and add bind value colon event. So if you are wanting to bind a particular property to the particular event, say a click event of a button or input change event of a text box, then this is to be used. So like, supposing you are writing on a text area and you can, whatever you are writing, it is visible on the browser as you are writing. However, you have to move the mouse out. You have to lose the focus from the text area to be able to render it on the browser. So if you want to avoid that, so that as you are typing on the text area, you get it on the browser, then you have to use this. You have to bind it to the event, which is on change event, I guess, for the text box. I have got some example of two-way data binding, but I'll have to dig it in if you're interested. So hello. All right. Let me see if I can show you some quick example of two-way binding. I think this is the same component.
Kaushik, while that's
Yes,
opening, maybe I'll just ask some questions that have been asked. The first question is that okay, maybe I'll ask the first question. So
sure.
My first question is that Blazor is not. Would you call Blazor production ready? Like, is it as?
Yes, of course, yes, sure. It is production ready. In fact, actually, there is quite a few good, production level application already on the net, actually. And Microsoft in their live conference this year, they have actually the person who is in charge of the Blazors, I think Steve Sanderson or whoever is his name, I don't recall quite clearly, but he has shown a beautiful car checker application, which I am also probably able to show you right now. what it does is that, for example, if you are a owner of a car vehicle renting company, so once you are getting the rental vehicles back to your fold after a customer returns the rental vehicle, so you can see, you can create a note on the various parts of the car, say on the bonnet, on the left hand side window, right hand side window, right hand door, left hand. So you can to a particular car, a model and make of the car, it will give you the 3D view on the Blazor application itself, because they have now uh, actually integrated quite a few third-party components can also be integrated. So you can make your notes. You can actually make notes of all the mileage that it has traveled before handing over to the customer and after handing over to customer, and how much fuel has been used, all that sort of thing. And not only that, I have myself seen, although I have never worked on a production Blazor in any company, but one of the very great examples of Blazor that is already floating on GitHub is a Blazor workshop, and that is a pizza delivery e-commerce site that they have created just for demo purposes. It doesn't have a payment gateway though, but you can deliver and order pizza, and it shows a pizza this cart, shopping cart. And not only that, they have shown how they have integrated a map, an map API, so that when the deliverer actually gets the pizza from the pizza shop, and as he's moving and coming to the customer, his movements are also tracked in that application. So these are the two examples, and people are always, talking about the Blazor in Microsoft regular community stand-ups. So I have reason to believe that those who have to adapt, they will adapt, or they have already adapted. But the thing is that, as with my own experience as a developer, people are very late, particularly in New Zealand. They are late to take up a new technology. So I think it's quite matured even at this moment to serve as a production ready.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. There's a question from Mohit, and just for people who are on the call, and if you want to ask any questions, the Q&A feature here isn't working, so you might be logging questions, but they are not coming on to me. So I will request you to just log.
Actually, they can email me also. Sudeep, if you can pass over my Gmail, I'm more than happy to answer their calls.
Yeah. So I think it will be more convenient if they just log it on the meetup site, because everyone has URL to it. But the question from Mohit is that is there a learning curve for people who are coming from a front-end technology stack? So I think he is Angular or a React guy.
Yeah, let me try to answer your question. That's a good question. Have any experience with the C#? Do you know C#?
Probably. I won't be able to ask the person, but yeah.
Okay.
Let's assume not.
If the only requirement is to know a little bit of C# or any other programming, high-level programming language, say even if it is Java or C++ will do, or even if you know Python or any, or even if you know just the JavaScript. I guess you will be knowing JavaScript, because C# is very easy to learn. I know with my huge experience in the last, you can say, production, I've been working on C# since 2005, and on and off in various contract as well as some permanent positions in Christchurch as well as in Auckland. So C# is quite easy to learn. So once you get a bit of a hang on C#, you will find it's a breeze, adapting to Blazor framework, because all it requires you to know is HTML, bit of CSS. So obviously, I take it for granted that if you're an Angular developer, you must be knowing HTML and CSS because it's basic stuff. So after that, only a little bit of C# syntax knowledge is required for you to adapt to Blazor. Anything
Okay,
else?
cool. Yeah, so there's a question from Paul, and Paul wants to know. So Paul is a Power Platform MVP. I know Paul. His question is around. He would be interested to know how well suited this technology is for business apps where there is a lot of interaction. Example, a point of sales app or a warehouse picking app. How fast can Blazor apps respond and render? So he's asking that because he wants to check for similar use cases in Power Apps.
Yeah, like as I said, what's his name? Please, Paul.
Paul,
Right?
Paul,
Paul.
yeah.
So Paul, if you're hearing me, I just replied to Sudeep on his one of the questions that whether it is production ready or not. So what I can say, even though I haven't worked in a production environment on Blazor exclusively, what I have seen from the Microsoft stand-up meetings and community stand-up meetings, as well as the recently concluded .NET conference in US, and it was broadcast because it is all on the net. So I was a regular listener. So they have actually put up a couple of very great examples, which leads me to believe that it is you can do point of sale application also quite easily. All you need to do is a bit of a learning curve that you have to overcome. As I've said that they have also given a good workshop on GitHub. I can give you the link, but if you wish to search right now from the by Googling it, you can write Blazor workshop, Microsoft. And they have also shown this application for a vehicle renting company. So these two applications, they are quite, I can believe, I have reasons to believe, having seen their code and their functions, their functionalities, that they are production level applications. And because of the fact that Telerik, big companies, multinational companies like Telerik UI and Red Hat and companies like DevExpress, and there may be many more which I am not aware of even at the moment. So they have put lots of their resources to build components to customize on the Blazor's free free source code available. They have put their own components. They have manufactured, you can say, designed and developed their own components like Blazor, grid functionalities and some map functionalities and many other functionalities. Actually, if I could answer your question, I will be happy to take it back home, and then I will do a bit of a research, and then I can answer even more to the point. But the thing is that the way they are publicizing and the people's response from all over the world, particularly very established professionals and MVPs and solution architects, that it can be relied upon even at this moment right now. But it is always evolving, that's for sure. But because you already have a stable version for both the WebAssembly as well as the server, so I think it is a safe bet now than ever before to involve into learning Blazor and see how it can be adapted to your applications.
Yeah, thanks, Kaushik. And one last question is that Mark wants to know what version of Visual Studio are you using?
Yeah,
Is
that's
it
a
the
very good question. That
community?
is, yeah, I am using Visual Studio 2019 community version,
Yeah.
and let me tell you the latest version that I'm keeping on updating my Visual Studio just to make it fully Blazor compatible, because this. So my version is, I think this is the latest version, 16.6, Visual Studio Community 2019 version 16.6. Now this comes fully loaded with the Blazor WebAssembly templates. Now what was happening earlier, because if you had installed Visual Studio 2019, even last year it was available. So in earlier versions, you had to actually run a few commands to install the WebAssembly template. So that's no more the case. Now with the release of the WebAssembly template, the first stable version last month, and with the latest upgrade of community version 2019, you are able to straight away delve into the WebAssembly template. Now, let me show you how. Just quickly, I can show you file. If you click on new and project, just to show you that all the templates are available in Blazor, and with the upgrading of this. So create a new template. So Blazor app, because I've been using it for the last few months, Blazor app. So if you click on next, and if you click on create, configure your new project, create. It comes up, it takes a bit of time initially, but after that it's quite quick. Yeah, so now you get this .NET Core 3.1, which is the latest. You had the 3.0, but 3.1 is the latest still. So maybe 3.2 has also come up. I am not very current, but in a preview version, but Blazor Server App and WebAssembly app. So the difference is it shows that, you know, it could, it is no authentication by default, but you can change it to have individual user accounts or work or school accounts and Windows authentication, right? And on the, you can configure it for HTTPS, and you can also enable Docker support. That's also a very good thing that, you know, you can enable Docker support straight away at the time of creation of the template, right? And if you click on WebAssembly, now the one good thing, because I have been seeing the WebAssembly evolution over the last 6 or 7 months. So earlier there was no authentication, but now you are also able to authenticate a Blazor WebAssembly app. Come to think of it, it was not thinkable a few months back. So you can even create a Blazor WebAssembly app with individual user accounts, which is the most popular. But I think these two are still grayed out because these two functionalities are not available. But for all the intents and purposes, I found individual user accounts is good enough for my purposes at least. And you can configure it for HTTPS, and you can go with or without the ASP.NET Core hosted. So if you are going for ASP.NET Core hosted application, so what happens that it will create 3 projects instead of 1. And you can also create progressive web applications. So if you create ASP.NET Core, if you click create, just quickly before leaving, you will be able to actually communicate your client code with your server, because now it is server hosted as well. Apart from WebAssembly template, it is server hosted. So you get the best feature of both the things, you know, best of both the worlds. So where is my, it is vanished Windows Explorers. So Solution Explorer, sorry. So if I bring my Solution Explorer, you can see that by creating this ASP.NET Core template, Blazor WebAssembly host, it has got Blazor Web Apps .client, .server, and .shared. This is shared. So I think in most of the practical purpose, this is your desired template, most likely desired template, because I've seen the 2 production ready applications from Microsoft. They are using this template. So they have actually the client talking to the server with the shared libraries between these 2. Okay, any other question?
No, no questions so far. And I think if there are no questions, then probably you can wrap up.
Yeah,
just summarize what you had said earlier.
Yeah, so thank you for giving me this opportunity. In today's meeting, I have discussed what a Blazor stands for, what it is, and what are the hosting models, and what are a couple of features like data binding, one-way, two-way data binding, and child-parent relationship, and its structure, component structure. But you know, the thing is, 1 hour is too short a time. Even with my limited knowledge in the world of Blazor, I can speak for a couple of hours at least, almost extempore. And Yes, I am happy to say that Blazor is ticking all the boxes so far as my own expectations are concerned, as well as the expectations of many other um, very highly respected professionals all over the world, Microsoft MVPs. And yes, if you are thinking you are most, I think it is the right time to explore Blazor as your front end technology if you are not already into Angular or React. But because all the old application, like it happens in the industry, legacy applications will be there to stay for quite some time. People just are not, um, they are ready to take up on a new technology and throw off their old things. So old will be in conjunction with the new. So yeah, so if you are building a brand new application, you can surely explore Blazor as a front end, as well as it is a complete front end as well as back end technology. You can
Yeah, thanks, Kaushik. Thanks a lot for
you're
delivering
welcome.
this talk.
Thank
And
you,
this
Sudeep.
session has been recorded, and I'll put it up on the Meetup site. Thanks
Thank you so
everyone for
much.
joining.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.